The eggnog was still warm when Mildred Donovan pulled me aside at her Christmas party. She didn't smile. She didn't offer me a drink, nor did she gesture toward the plush velvet armchairs arranged near the roaring hearth. She just fixed me with those cold blue eyes, eyes that had assessed diamond clarity and barge tonnage with equal detachment for 40 years and delivered the blow. "Leah, it's time to replace you." The sounds of the party, a high-fidelity hum of crystal clinking against crystal, and the murmur of Street Lewis's shipping elite seemed to be sucked out of the room. The air in the oak-paneled study grew thin, sharp, and smelling faintly of old paper and expensive scotch. "Replace me?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign, heavy things in my mouth. "Mildred, the quarterly figures for the Memphis hub just came in yesterday. We're up 12%. I just secured the grain contracts for the entire lower Mississippi basin." Mildred walked slowly around her desk, the desk I had commissioned for her 60th birthday, hand-carved from reclaimed riverwood. She trailed a manicured finger along the edge, not looking at me. "You're no longer effective for Donovan River Logistics. Effectiveness isn't just about current numbers, Leah. It's about trajectory, and yours has flattened. I'm Leah Pierce. I'm 39 years old. And until that precise, suffocating moment, I thought my 9 years of grinding, of sacrificing, of bleeding for this family had secured my place in the bedrock of their empire. I'd started as a junior logistics coordinator, a glorified dispatcher fighting with truck drivers at 4 a.m. I had risen to senior operations manager, pouring in weekends, missing Thanksgiving dinners, taking calls during my daughter's fever dreams, all to keep the Donovan fleet moving south. The party hummed behind the heavy oak doors. I could hear the muffled baritone of a cello playing Silent Night. My 11-year-old daughter, Kendall, was upstairs, likely giggling with her cousins, oblivious that her world was being dismantled floorboard by floorboard. "Mildred," I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with a sudden rising fury. "I know this business better than anyone on the payroll. I know the draft depth of every channel from here to New Orleans. I know which dockmasters take bribes and which ones take scotch. You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted, finally looking up. Her face was a mask of serene cruelty. "And I have. You're experienced, Leah. I'll grant you that. But you're analog in a digital world. The industry is sprinting toward automation, AI-driven manifesting, predictive routing. We need fresh perspective, younger blood. You've pushed back too hard on the modernization protocols. Because they don't work." I stepped forward, the fight-or-flight response flooding my veins with adrenaline. I pushed back because the automated sensors fail when the humidity hits 90% in the delta. I pushed back because a computer can't negotiate with a union foreman who's threatening to walk off the job at midnight. "That was 2 years back," she snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "Technology evolves. You haven't." Dylan Turner steps in January 15th. The name hit me harder than the termination. "Dylan?" I choked out a laugh, harsh and dry. "The consultant? The 28-year-old Vanderbilt MBA I spent the last 6 months mentoring? Mildred, he thinks a barge is just a rectangle on an iPad. He's never stepped foot in a mud-slicked boatyard." "He has the drive we crave," she said, dismissing my objection with a wave of her hand. 6 months severance. A year of insurance. It's fair, generous, even, considering. Considering what? Considering your family only by marriage, not blood. The distinction hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. I looked at the woman I had spent nearly a decade trying to impress, trying to please, treating like a second mother. I saw nothing back but a ledger sheet. "Does Garrett know?" I asked, the question barely a whisper. Mildred turned her back to me, looking out the window at the snow falling on the manicured lawn. "Tell him post-holidays, don't ruin the night. He's having a good time." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I turned on my heel, the silk of my dress rustling a sound that suddenly felt too loud, and walked out. I slipped through the crowded living room, a ghost haunting a celebration that was no longer mine. I passed the tree, 12 feet tall and dripping in gold ribbon. I saw Garrett across the room, glass of champagne in hand, laughing at a joke from a prospective investor. He looked happy, safe. I didn't grab him. I didn't scream. I grabbed my coat from the cloakroom, bypassing the valet to retrieve my own keys from the hook. I walked out into the biting cold, the snow melting against my heated skin. I drove home through the silence of Christmas Eve, the windshield wipers counting time like a metronome. When I got to the house, our house, I thought, though the deed was in the trust, I didn't cry. I moved with the efficiency Mildred claimed I lacked. I pulled 2 large suitcases from the closet. I didn't pack clothes first. I packed the things that couldn't be replaced. The framed photo of my parents from their wedding day. Kendall's first ballet slippers, pink satin worn gray at the toes. Her nebulizer from when she had asthma as a toddler. Then, the essentials. Jeans, sweaters, toiletries. I was moving on autopilot, a machine calibrated for survival. I wrote a note for the housekeeper, taped it to the fridge, and then paused. I walked into the living room and looked at the life we had built. The throw pillows I'd agonized over. The piano nobody played. It all looked like a stage set now. Fake props for a play that had been canceled. I left before Garrett rolled in. I headed straight to Union Station in downtown St. Louis. It was a cavernous, echoing place, a monument to a time when travel meant something grand. Now, at midnight on Christmas Eve, it was a tomb. I parked in the empty lot, the snow crunching under my tires. I hauled the suitcases into the great hall, the vaulted ceiling soaring 65 feet above me, painted with frescoes that seemed to mock my smallness. I sat on a worn wooden bench, my eyes fixed on the blinking departure board. Asterisk 6:45 a.m. Chicago, on time asterisk. Midnight crept closer. The station was silent save for the distant hum of a floor buffer and the occasional crackle of a radio. My head was empty. My future was gone. I was 39, unemployed, and homeless in the span of 3 hours. If this story is hitting you, loyalty crushed by family you trusted, value erased overnight, smash subscribe now. Drop a comment. When did in-laws betray you hardest? I like to keep these raw truths coming. Your support fuels more. The front door of the station clicked open just after 1:0 inches the morning. The sound was distinct, a sharp metallic latch echoing in the silence. I didn't look up, assuming it was security. But the footsteps were familiar. Heavy, hesitant. Leah? I looked up. Garrett stood there, his cheeks flushed red from the cold and the champagne. His tie was loosened, his expensive overcoat unbuttoned. He looked out of place, a tuxedoed statue in a transit center. He stopped dead when he saw the 2 suitcases at my feet. Leah, what the hell is going on? The valet said you took your car. Mom said you had a migraine. I sat on the bench, coat still buttoned to my chin, keys clutching in my hand like a weapon. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw the softness of his jaw, the way his eyes darted around the room, afraid of being seen even in an empty station. Your mother didn't say I had a migraine, I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion. She fired me, Garrett. At the party, while you were toasting the new fiscal year, she told me I'm being replaced next month by Dylan Turner. He blinked, processing the information. He rubbed his forehead, a gesture of avoidance I knew well. Wait, she did it tonight? Jesus. She did it tonight, I repeated. But you're not surprised she did it. It wasn't a question. Garrett sighed, a long, rattling exhalation. He sat on the bench opposite me, keeping the aisle between us. She mentioned restructuring. A couple of weeks ago, she said the river freight side needed a total overhaul. Digital manifests, real-time tracking, the whole blockchain integration. She thinks you've been resistant. You knew. I knew she was thinking about it. He threw his hands up, defensive now. I didn't know she was going to drop the hammer on Christmas Eve, Leah. That's extreme, even for her. But you knew the hammer was there, I said, the cold in my chest spreading to my limbs. And you didn't warn me. You let me walk into that room, let me buy her that desk. Let me work 80 hours last week to prep the year-end reports, all while knowing I was a dead woman walking. It's not that simple. Garrett leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. If I push back hard right now, everything gets complicated. The house is in her trust, Leah. My stake in the company. Technically, the voting shares are still hers until she retires or dies. If I go against her on this strategic shift, everything is at risk. The inheritance, the lifestyle we've built for Kendall. This isn't just about you, it's about all of us. There it was. The naked, ugly truth. Not outrage on my behalf, not even surprise, just calculation. He was protecting his future, our daughter's private school tuition, the lake cabin we barely used. I was the variable he couldn't afford to defend. I was the sacrificial lamb required to keep the trust fund intact. I stood up slowly. My legs felt stiff. I get it, Garrett, I really do. He stood too, reaching for my arm, his grip half-hearted, slippery. Come on, don't do anything rash. Just come home. Sleep in the guest room if you want. We'll talk to her tomorrow. We'll smooth it over. Maybe she can find you a consulting role, keep you on the payroll. No. The word came out calm. Final. A stone dropping into a deep well. I'm not staying where I'm only useful until I'm not. And I'm certainly not staying with a man who watches his wife get executed and worries about the splatter getting on his inheritance. His face tightened, the handsome mask slipping to reveal the petulant child beneath. You walk out now, Leah. And you're walking away from everything. The support, the status. I'm walking away from the lie, I said. Goodbye, Garrett. I picked up the suitcases. He didn't offer to help. He just stood there, watching me, paralyzed by his own comfort. I walked toward the ticketing counter, even though it was closed. I needed to be away from him. I heard his footsteps retreat, then the heavy click of the station doors. He was gone. He would go home, drink another glass of scotch, and tell himself he had tried. The silence returned, heavier this time. I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice message for Kendall. My throat felt tight, like I had swallowed broken glass. But I forced my voice to be soft, warm, the mother she needed. Hey, sweet girl. Mommy has to go take care of something important tonight, a big work adventure. I love you bigger than the whole Mississippi River. I'll pick you up tomorrow afternoon from Grandma's, and we'll get hot chocolate with extra whipped cream at that place you love downtown, okay? Sweet dreams, baby. I hit send. I slipped the phone into my pocket. My plan was Amtrak. The earliest train to Chicago was at 6:45 a.m. I had 5 hours to kill on a hard bench. I sat down, wrapped my coat tighter, and closed my eyes. The memories rolled in without fighting them. 9 years. I'd started right after Kendall turned 2. I took the junior coordinator job because Garrett said it would keep me close to the family business, give us stability. I learned every bend of the river. I learned the names of the crane operators, the smell of diesel and river mud, the specific vibration of a tugboat engine in need of repair. I missed Kendall's first school play because a grain barge grounded near Cape Girardeau, and I was the only one who could talk the salvage crew into working overnight. I skipped our 10th anniversary trip so I could negotiate a new rail contract that saved the company $400,000 annually. All of it because I thought I was building times with times them, not just times for times them. A vibration in my pocket jolted me. Not a text, a call. I looked at the screen. Asterisk. Unknown number. Asterisk. I let it ring. It stopped, then rang again immediately. I answered, wary. Hello? Mrs. Pierce? The voice was male, smooth, calm. This is Lucas Adams. Please don't hang up. Adams. The name rang a bell, distant and echoing. I don't know you. You know of my mother, he said. Marilyn Adams, Adams Freight Solutions. The competition. The quiet giant across the river. What do you want at 2 a.m? I'm outside Union Station, Lucas said. Black SUV, idling in the loading zone. My mother would like to buy you a cup of coffee. She thinks you might be in need of a new conversation. I'm not in the mood for headhunters, I snapped. It's not a headhunt, Mrs. Pierce. It's a rescue. You've been sitting on that bench for 45 minutes. Security cameras are a wonderful thing when you own the logistics software the station uses. Please, just coffee. If you don't like what she says, I'll drive you personally to Chicago. I hesitated. The bench was hard. The station was freezing. And I had nothing left to lose. I'm coming out, I said. The SUV hummed smoothly through the near-empty streets, wipers sweeping occasional flurries from the windshield. Lucas drove without rushing, hands steady at 10 and 2. Classical music played low on the radio, something with pianos that filled the silence without demanding attention. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that watched the road with intensity. "So," I said, breaking the silence as my suitcases rattled softly in the back. "Your mom really predicted I'd end up at Union Station tonight?" Lucas glanced over, streetlights flashing across his face. Not the exact bench, but the pattern. "Yeah. She's good at reading people in this industry." Mom started tracking Donovan River Logistics seriously about 2 years ago. A former recruiter there owes her a favor, still feeds her anonymous updates on internal shifts. "When your access badge got deactivated at 9:47 p.m. tonight on Christmas Eve, the flag went up immediately." "She spies on everyone?" "She monitors the ecosystem," Lucas corrected gently. "She assumed you'd leave cleanly. From everything she's heard, your performance reviews, the way you handled the warehouse crisis during the floods, the rail contract you negotiated. Single-handedly, she figured, you wouldn't stick around for humiliation. You're independent, professional, the type who books a one-way ticket and figures the rest out later." I couldn't argue. That was exactly what I'd done. "She's followed your work longer than that," he continued. "She actually said the way you integrated manual checks into the automated loading system at the Memphis terminal was brilliant. It prevented a lot of costly errors the pure tech crowd overlooks. Mom hates waste. She loves practical solutions." He pulled into an underground garage beneath a modern glass building that overlooked the arch. "We're here." We rode the elevator to the 27th floor in silence. The doors opened directly into a sleek reception area. Dark wood floors, abstract metal sculptures, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the snow-dusted city and the Mississippi, a dark ribbon winding through the lights. A woman stood waiting by the windows. Silver hair in a neat bob, wearing tailored slacks and a cashmere sweater, professional but comfortable, like she'd been working late by choice. "Marilyn Adams." She crossed the room, hand extended. "Leah Pierce. Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm, her palm rough calluses from years on docks, not just sitting in boardrooms. "Coffee?" She gestured to a cluster of leather chairs. A carafe steamed on a low table. "I think I need it," I said, sinking into a chair. The exhaustion was hitting me now. A physical weight. "I won't waste your time with small talk," Marilyn said, pouring 2 cups black. "I know what happened tonight. I know Mildred Donovan's reasoning, fresh blood, younger vision, automation at all costs, and I know it's their loss." I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my frozen fingers. "You're offering me a job." "Straight to it." "Yes." Marilyn leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Director of Operations for Adams Freight Solutions, full autonomy over 12 regional teams, a base salary double what you made at Donovan. Performance bonuses capped at 50%, and meaningful equity that vests over 4 years. I stared at her. "Double? And flexible," she added. "Remote when you need it for your daughter. We value results, not FaceTime. If you can fix a crisis from your kitchen table, stay at the table." "Why me?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "There are plenty of 28-year-old MBAs with the latest certifications. Why pick up the Donovan cast-off?" Marilyn smiled, not kindly, but with deep respect. "Because MBAs can model efficiency on spreadsheets. You've done it in the mud at 3 a.m. when a barge is stuck and a client is screaming. Experience like yours, the ability to blend the old world of river muscle with the new world of data, can't be taught. And loyalty, real loyalty, goes both ways here." She slid a folder across the table. "Contract draft. Standard non-compete carved out for consulting, full benefits. Lucas can take you to the company suite at the hotel across the street. 2 months paid, no strings. Sleep, shower, think. Call me in the morning if you want to talk numbers or walk away." I looked at the folder, then at the window, where the city lights blurred through the snow. "I don't need until morning," I said quietly. I reached into my bag for a pen. "Read it first," Marilyn commanded gently. "Always read the manifest before you sign the load." I opened the folder. The numbers were staggering. The equity grant alone was worth more than 10 years of raises at Donovan. But it was the scope of work that caught me. Asterisk authority to override automated systems based on field conditions. Asterisk. She understood. She actually understood the job. I signed the last page with a steady hand. "Welcome to Adam's Freight," Marilyn said, taking the folder back. "Now go sleep. You have a daughter to pick up tomorrow." The next 2 years were a blur of motion, but not the frantic, desperate grinding of my past life. This was purposeful. I moved into a condo downtown, then bought a house with a yard for Kendall 6 months later. The divorce was handled by Marilyn's corporate attorneys, clean, fast, no fault. Garrett didn't fight it. He was too busy drowning. I spent my days in the field and my evenings with my daughter. I wore hard hats and steel-toed boots as often as heels. I flew to failing terminals in Iowa and Louisiana. I listened to the dock workers. I implemented hybrid systems using the high-tech tracking Dylan Turner loved, but keeping the manual fail-safes he despised. And we started winning. Clients who left Donovan began calling us. "We need reliability," they'd say. "We hear you have a director who actually knows the river." I watched Donovan River Logistics from afar, like watching a slow-motion car crash. It started small. Dylan Turner rolled out his total automation vision in February. By March, the spring floods hit. The sensors, blinded by silt and high water, began misreporting barge depths. Automated loading cranes overloaded 3 barges in a week, grounding them and blocking the channel near Vicksburg. Mildred blamed the weather. Dylan blamed the legacy hardware. But the clients didn't care whose fault it was. They just knew their grain was rotting in the hold. By summer, Donovan had lost the Memphis grain haul, the very contract I had secured. They lost it to us. I remember the day that contract landed on my desk. I signed it, feeling a cold, hard satisfaction. Garrett called me in the fall. I let it go to voicemail. He left a rambling message about market headwinds and asked if I could waive the alimony for a few months. I didn't waive it. I put the money into a trust for Kendall. By the second Christmas, the rumors were undeniable. Donovan was bleeding cash. The banks were calling in loans. Mildred had sold the suburban estate and moved into a condo. Garrett had been quietly let go, restructured, out of his own family legacy. 33 to 36. 3 years have passed since that Christmas Eve. My office now sits on the top floor of Adam's Freight Solutions, corner windows framing the wide brown curve of the Mississippi below. As partner, a title Marilyn bestowed on me last month, along with a significant equity bump, I oversee the entire Midwest division, billions in annual throughput. Teams that trust me to make the hard calls because they know I've stood on the docks with them. Mornings start early, but they start with peace. I drink coffee on my patio, watching the sun come up over the river, before reviewing reports. Kendall is 14 now. She's tall, sharp-witted, and resilient. She walks into my office after school sometimes, drops her backpack on the leather sofa, and spins in my chair. "Mom," she said last week, looking at a model of a barge on my shelf. "Dad called again." I looked up from my laptop. "Oh? Yeah, he said he's working at a rail yard now, night shift coordinator." She picked up the model, turning it over in her hands. He sounded old. "He made his choices, Ken," I said softly. "I know." She set the boat down. "I told him we're busy. I told him you were taking me to look at high schools this weekend." She looked at me, a fierce pride in her eyes. "You fixed everything, Mom. You know that? You didn't just get a new job. You fixed times us asterisk." I stood up and walked over to her, pulling her into a hug. She smelled of vanilla shampoo in the outdoors. "We fixed us, baby." The collapse of Donovan River Logistics was finalized in Chapter 11 bankruptcy court last month. The assets were auctioned off. We bought 3 of their terminals for pennies on the dollar. I walked through the Street Lewis terminal, the one where I had started my career with a clipboard in hand. I saw the ghost of my younger self there, stressed, undervalued, desperate for approval from people who saw me as a line item. I saw the empty office where Mildred used to sit. I felt nothing, no anger, no triumph, just the cool, professional assessment of square footage and crane capacity. Marilyn retired this year, though she keeps an office down the hall. She stopped by yesterday, leaning against my doorframe. "You were the best risk I never took," she said, watching me organize a fleet deployment for the upcoming harvest. "You took a risk picking up a stray from Union Station at 2 a.m., I countered, smiling. "That wasn't a risk, Leah. That was arbitrage. I saw value where the market saw waste." That's just good business." She winked and walked away. The river keeps moving outside my window, steady and strong, indifferent to the names painted on the sides of the barges. It flows south, carrying grain and steel and coal. It demands respect. It demands attention. And finally, so do I. That Christmas Eve, sitting on the cold bench in the empty station, I thought my life was over. I thought the story had ended. But looking back now, I realized that wasn't the end. It was just the moment the credits rolled on a prequel I had outgrown. The real movie? The one where the heroine saves herself, builds an empire, and raises a daughter who knows her own worth? That started the moment I picked up those suitcases and walked out the door. And it's a hell of a show.